today we're going to talk about IoT. So it's not a fancy two-letter acronym type deal that we are seeing a lot of or hearing a lot of AI and ML, but we are back to TLAs, three-letter acronyms, IoT. And to help me with, because I'm not an IoT expert, but today to help me, I have Dom with me, and we will talk about, his background and everything else. But just to kind of, a quick, primer or intro to IoT. It stands for Internet of Things. So that is just what it means. So Dom, who has spent majority of his career at AT&T. He has held multiple systems engineering, sales, and business development roles. He has spent a decade with IoT space helping customers launch their IoT solutions. He holds a master's degree in computer engineering from Florida Atlantic University. So today I'd like to welcome Dom. So Dom, welcome to the session today, and say hello to the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Shankar, for having me on your webinar here today. I'm happy to go over what IoT is all about for your audience. As you mentioned, IoT stands for Internet of Things. It is essentially a network of connected devices and technology that facilitates communication between devices and the cloud. So essentially, that's what IoT is. And as of now, according to the industry analysts, the IoT is growing at a rate of 30% CAGR. So compounded annual growth rate between 2023 to 2030 for the next 7 years. So that's one of the main reasons why this is an important topic of discussion.
That's interesting. 30%, that's a pretty sizable growth. I mean, I thought that since IoT has been around for a little bit, I mean, like we can talk about a little bit of history of IoT and what was there before IoT, or what did it just fell out of the skies and we got IoT. If you want to just kind of educate us on a little bit of how we got here.
Definitely, good question. So prior to IoT, way back in early 2000, it was known as machine to machine, so M to M, and from there it evolved into IoT, Internet of Things. So again, the implementation of IoT solutions helps to drive innovation. It provides new revenue stream opportunities for businesses. It provides better customer experience, better asset utilization, improves employee productivity, and increases the efficiency in supply chain and logistics. So it can be applied to any industry vertical.
So yeah, so you mentioned a lot of the verticals here. So what? I mean, if someone was to ask you what would be the top two verticals for IoT?
Yeah, I would say manufacturing and logistics, supply chain, transportation.
Okay, and what are some of the sunrise areas for IoTs, like where you're seeing the most growth?
Yeah, the most growth, as I mentioned, is manufacturing. Right now, we are seeing in the U.S. manufacturers are pivoting from offshore to onshore, right? Bringing the manufacturing back here into U.S. So as they are building up this new manufacturing plants, instead of using a wired network, which has been a traditional way of connecting the various assets within the plant. Now, manufacturers are looking to leverage, for example, 5G, which is a licensed spectrum, which provides latency, high security, high throughput for various manufacturing applications.
Okay, excellent. So actually, on that note, Dom, let's talk about the high level 30,000 feet architecture. And then maybe you can walk us through a little bit, not the IP address level and all that kind of stuff, but maybe a little lower in terms of what are the major components and how does this IoT come together?
Mhm. Yeah, if you look at the IoT, essentially you have the hardware, which is the modem and the sensors, which are at the edge, collecting that data. Uh, and then you have the network, which is enabling the movement of that data that's been collected from these devices onto the cloud. So then, and at the cloud, that's where you have the application where the data is ingested, and you are looking at developing the dashboard, doing the analytics, which can then be using AI and ML as the two-letter acronyms, as you mentioned earlier, which enables to provide predictive maintenance, predictive analysis of this data that's been collected.
Okay, excellent. So what I understand is that the IoT is kind of sitting at the periphery and then collecting data. That is the main purpose of existence for these devices.
Mm-hmm.
And then to transfer it over using networks into centrally managed data warehouses or data lakes or what have you. And then for other systems, like you mentioned, AI, ML type systems, to make sense of all this stream of data flowing in. And is that kind of the same approach that is adopted or that is seen in different verticals you mentioned, or is it like some nuances to that?
Yeah, again, it depends on the use case, right? For example, if you are looking at manufacturing use case, which we talked about earlier, and let's say you are using video as a sensor, for example, right? Where in an auto manufacturing plant, the welding joints are verified by a video as a sensor that's collecting the data, and you want to analyze that data that's been collected in real time. And that can be done by processing that data at the edge versus sending all of the data that's been collected, the video data that's been collected into the cloud. So you avoid the latency, and you are able to now process that data at the edge in real time. So you can, ensure, the plant is functioning optimally, and you can do any type of error correction in real time as the process is flowing there.
Okay. So one question that comes to mind, Dom, is that, we all carry something called, a device of sorts of ourselves. And each of us have, faced the dilemma of it running out of juice. And so now we're talking about all these devices, which are, in different, remote parts of your manufacturing floor or in a hospital maybe, or in a supply chain or things of that nature. How are they powered? I mean, like, what is the magic? Do they all carry a little solar cell where they get powered in the day and a lithium-ion battery, or is it like, what is it?
That's a real good question, Shankar. Again, it depends on the use case. For example, let's say it's an agriculture use case where you are monitoring the soil, for example, the nitrogen level of the soil, the humidity in the soil. All of that can be done. For example, when the sensors can utilize, as an example, a solar energy, right? To power that sensor and that remote device in the field. Then you have other use cases where, for example, if you are using narrowband IoT, it's low power. Essentially, the battery technology has improved where the battery can last up to 10 years.
Okay, so actually, you mentioned a term that I think most of the listeners probably are not aware of, which is narrowband IoT. So I'm assuming this is a kind of the connectivity fabric of this Internet of Things. So maybe Dom, if you can, take a couple of minutes to just kind of go through what are the various ways you get all these things talking with the central servers or databases, and what are some of the, like, power consumption type deals? You mentioned some devices can last up to 10 years. Some, like video sensors you mentioned, might need to be actively powered up because they're consuming so much energy in terms of video processing and things of that nature. So Dom, let's just talk about this fabric and how it's all put together.
Yeah, I mean, there are various technologies that can be utilized for IoT, right? It could be Wi-Fi, it could be LoRaWAN, it could be Zigbee, Bluetooth. It could also be narrowband IoT, LTE, and 5G. So again, primarily it is driven by the use case, right? For example, let's say it's a consumer type of a use case where you have, for example, the home appliances, right? You have the refrigerator, you have the TV, you have a washer, dryer, dishwasher, microwave. So these type of appliances can typically, for example, embed Wi-Fi connectivity. And now this appliance has become a smart appliance now. You can remotely monitor it, collect data, and use the Wi-Fi connectivity to provide that data capture from that remote device. So, for example, you can maintain the list of groceries in your refrigerator and monitor it, and then it can alert you saying, "Hey, you need to go back and you're running out of milk or eggs. You need to replenish it." So that's a use case where you are utilizing Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is an unlicensed spectrum, and the consumer doesn't have to pay for that connectivity. They are utilizing their existing internet bandwidth that's available at their home with their bandwidth with their internet provider. Whereas when you look at narrowband IoT, LTE, and 5G, those are licensed spectrum. So they provide you more security as well as higher throughput, latency. So those are the advantages of utilizing the licensed spectrum. In that case, when we put the solution together, you will have to pay for consuming that bandwidth to that wireless provider.
So let me just quickly pause. So when you mention licensed spectrum, the first thing that comes to mind are carriers like AT&T. So what kind of role do carriers play in this? I mean, as you mentioned, Wi-Fi is just available and it's just yours and things of that nature. And how is it all? Is it like you go devices buy from different vendors, or you buy a package where you get the whole connectivity with the devices, or you piecemeal it together and you need a team of architects and consultants and all of that? Like how is, if someone wants to do this, look at IoT, what is their best way to move forward to make it happen?
That's a very good question, Shankar. So IoT is highly fragmented. As I mentioned earlier, right? When you look at the components of the IoT solution, you have the hardware, then you have the network, and then you have the application providers, the cloud providers, right? So the ecosystem is highly fragmented. So in order to provide, for example, you mentioned the wireless carriers, their role essentially is providing the connectivity, right? And they also are able to provide, beyond connectivity, they also have professional services organization where they can help you to develop that proof of concept. And if you need feet on the street to do the installations at the sites, they can provide that. And that can also be provided by various system integrators. So again, when you are looking at developing and launching IoT solution, you need to have an ecosystem to support that deployment.
Okay. So to kind of, we talked about the devices and the carriers and the role they play, and you also mentioned that it's kind of fragmented and so there's a lot of homework that the someone trying to get into this needs to do to make sure that they are, on solid ground. Because as like everything else in technology, the more you do, the harder it gets to change ships or whatever metaphor that works for you, going from the Mars to Moon or whatever it is. So it's important to start off on the right approach and not just kind of, assume that it will just kind of automatically flow. And so now, we talked about taking a step back, Dom. We talked about, the data part and the end of the day, the goal of these devices, fabric, wireless or carrier spectrum, everything else is to transfer data, right? And so the question is, what is it that this data is used? How is it used? What does it help in terms of ROI and trying to, the main reason I'm assuming is data and what you can do with the data. So, let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. Again, it depends on the use case, right? If you're looking at a video as a sensor, the amount of data collected is in gigabytes. Because you're collecting, video, which is a high-def video. So you're collecting a lot of data. Whereas if you're looking at, for example, a utility meter as a use case, where you are, collecting that data maybe once a day or once a week or once a month, that is a small amount of data, right? So again, it depends on the type of use case that's going to drive the amount of data. And then some of that data can be processed at the edge itself, because that device that's deployed in the field, the connected device that's in the field, has memory and CPU and an OS. So that data that can be collected and analyzed right there. For example, if let's say it's a temperature monitoring, if the temperature is out of range, it can process that data right there, versus sending that data into the cloud, and then you are analyzing that data in the cloud. So again, it depends on the use case. And does that help, Shankar?
Yeah, no, that helps because I mean, what I'm here, what I am hearing is that for more critical data, which could be in some situations, because I hear a lot about medical IoT devices, if something life-threatening or what have you, then it may be some, out of band or some more real-time applications built on top of that data, as opposed to more routine, I don't know, blood pressure or pulse rate or some of those kinds of things being handled at the central locations that are being monitored for various things. So I guess, what the use case is kind of going to help a business or decide what or the IoT the devices themselves, what channel to use to communicate the data back. And which is great. I mean, I didn't know that. There's something new you learn whenever you get some little deeper into something, and so that's very interesting. I think there was a lot of great stuff, Dom, that we talked about, and I know this is just the part one of our two-part series, and in the next part. We are going to talk to Dom again, and this time we are going to focus more on the customers and what are the various challenges of onboarding, implementation, and post sales and all of that. So this one was more of the ecosystem, or why do you need to know about IoT? And next time we are going to talk to Dom, we are going to keep a little bit more focus on the consumers of this beautiful technology, this emerging technology, and how it is it to work with the customers for people. And we will also talk to Dom about for how to get into IoT. If somebody is just graduating or graduated or has worked 5 years, in some other area, but now they are looking at IoT as a possible career move. So we're going to talk about all this exciting stuff in our second part of this series. Take care and don't forget to like, subscribe to our channel. and leave a comment because we love comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Shankar.